What was a local story about a little ridgeline that might get developed, and he made it about John Muir's legacy. And that was one of the things that allowed the communications to take off as well. It became a much bigger issue, and I'll let him tell you about that. But ultimately, what happened was the city agreed to do a poll. The city council, I think, like a lot of us, thought, we're going to shut him up, we're going to do this poll, it's going to show it's not very likely, or when it showed it was possible, oh, we'll put it on the ballot, but it probably won't pass. And at that point, he and all of the volunteers, which includes many of you in this room, Gretchen, etc., you did the legwork. This was a true grassroots effort. You overcame the odds. The developer didn't take it seriously, and Martinez voters went for it. As they went for AA, East Bay Park's AA, as they went for East Bay Park's Measure W, as they went for Measure H. The Martinez voters have been generous one time after another. And I'll tell you, here's the inside story. The developers were sure it was going to fall apart. It wouldn't pass. Even if it passed, the city wouldn't get the work done. And they were in negotiations with the developer about buying the property and finally developing it. The infrastructure costs had held it up for years, but as property values in Martinez were rising, it was getting to the point where it was a viable project. And Jamie Foxx's efforts, the last city council, including Brianne Zorn, doing the poll, putting it on the ballot. We can thank Rob Schroeder, Larry Delaney, Mark Ross, and Debbie McKillop, as well as Brianne, for putting it on the ballot, and Jamie Foxx and his army of volunteers for making it happen.
So, welcome Jamie Foxx. That kind of nailed it there, so I really appreciate the intro. I know what it's like to schedule an event like this, and you don't know how many people are going to come up. And so just by you folks showing up, it means a lot to Mark, Seth, and the steering committee that put this on. I usually brought free donuts to my events just to hope people would show up. So thank you all for coming. My family over there, Owen, Hazel, Marcella, and my A couple of years ago, the kids were up here holding the photos. I don't know if some of you might have been here. I even brought, just to embarrass my son, Owen, here's a picture of him up on one of my favorite trees up on the hill. This tree you can go up and down on the branch like a surfboard. It's like a surfboard oak tree. So now kids will be able to go up there legally. So for me, like Seth said, it was 12 years of effort. I don't think in your life you get a lot of like 12-year projects. You know, most construction projects I work on at Google are like 4 years max. So I was trying to think of like a metaphor to describe those 12 years and what it means, because I'm one of those talk forever, meaning of life kind of guys. Marcella's probably like, hurry up. So I used to call it like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like, let's try putting flyers on doorsteps. Let's try, I had a little flyer on the John Muir National site where there was business cards that people could see, and I get in trouble because you're not supposed to put things on the billboard. So it was like throwing spaghetti on the wall. You just hope that something sticks, and I was always looking for like that, something to stick, and it'd be like the silver bullet that saves the hill. And it turns out, and I thought of this last night, like the proper metaphor is not spaghetti sticking on a wall. I think the right metaphor is a web of humanity, because every little thing that we did and all of you contributed created the result. It wasn't like one spaghetti sticking on the wall. It was all the little connections. So I'll try to keep this brief, but I wanted to kind of go through some of the connections that brought it into reality, even starting when I was born. So I was born, going way back, I was born in 1980. I was raised in Auburn, California. My parents, my dad might even be on the line, were actually married on top of Half Dome, which was, and tragically, my mom passed away when I was 10 months old from a brain aneurysm. So for me, Yosemite was always this kind of symbolic place that kind of represented like my motherly energy. And I felt, everyone feels good in Yosemite, but it was a little extra special. And so I actually named my son Owen Muir Foxx as his middle name, because it was like a tribute to like my mother in a way, right? Yosemite, Muir. I didn't actually know a lot about Muir. I've learned a lot more in the last 12 years about Muir. And then in 2007, fast forward, I was 27 years old. I actually had stage 4 cancer. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so I had to go to chemotherapy in Walnut Creek for 8 months. And honestly, that's when I learned like the trails in our area are like healing trails. It's not fake. They really do heal. And I started to realize like when you're on those trails and it's sunset and you're out on a ridgeline, you get the feeling like you're in Yosemite. Like you don't actually have to drive all the way to Yosemite to get those feelings. And that's pretty powerful because not everybody can afford it, has time to go to Yosemite. And so for me, sunsets and walking are a big part of not only do I feel good for myself, I think about my family, I think about what's important, I forgive people, all those like cleansing things happen out on the trails. So when I fell in love with the hill, like Seth said, it was to me, seeing that destroyed was like, imagine a car is on fire and like people are inside. Like that's how strongly I felt about it. Like we have to do something about this. And that relentlessness that Seth was saying came from that feeling that we can't just stop. We have to, it's not built yet, so we got to keep doing something. Keep the flame alive. And I think to me, I have a friend that was a professional photographer, Dave Collier. If you have a AAA magazine, he does the photos for the cover of the magazine. So I dragged him out to take photos because Seth has a good friend named Bob Walker, the late Bob Walker, and I thought I'd use this quote. I think it's so accurate. It says, to involve the public, you have to make each of your pictures 1,000 times more spectacular than what you might see on an exquisite day. Otherwise, you'll never even convey 1/10 of what it feels like to be out there on the dullest gray day when nothing's going on. That's so true. Like, I couldn't drag people up there. I didn't know if people even saw it or cared about it, but Dave took this photo of the ridgeline from Mount Wanda. And on the same afternoon, he drove down from Auburn, took this photo of the highest elevation tree in Martinez that was going to be removed and destroyed. So this was a catalyst in a way. We could show people really what was at stake, kind of visual storytelling in a way. And then it got went down the rabbit hole even further. Learned that there's a map that I found in 2014. This guy. This parcel in 1894 was owned by John Muir. And you can see the creek, and so it's really easy to line it up in Google Earth. And sure enough, the whole northern end of the property, when you line it up, that's Muir's parcel. So all of a sudden, the project became a threat to a federally historic part of our city. In fact, this was the only land Muir owned in 1894. In 1895, Mount Wanda became in his name. For whatever reason, the family transferred. And just trying to learn more, here's the picture, the earliest known photo of the Muir house. This is Mount Wanda, which is protected, and this is the Alhambra Hills. So that their family called it the Western Hill and the Eastern Hill. And Muir is buried in the valley below, which I also didn't know when I started learning about everything. So all these connections in history were just built the flame, and the reason we have to save this land. I kind of developed my own style. Seth, let me know if I'm going over on time a little bit. We're doing good. I think it's important to kind of highlight, I took a slightly different approach. Like mentors like Tim Platt, Gay Gerlach, we used to meet at her house once a month. I have so much respect for them. When I came on board, I did kind of notice that it was like, you can't work with that city council member, you can't work with that person, you can't work with the mayor, and I was like, oh geez, how are we going to get anything done? And it's just my nature, I think, to be maybe a little more naive, I guess, and friendly in a way. But then I started learning about, like, there's a Julia Butterfly Hill, if you remember, she helped save the redwood trees, the old growth, by sitting in a tree for 2 years straight. And I watched a lot of her videos, and one of them really resonated with me. I wanted to share this quote with you. And she's speaking about like her philosophy. And she says, we're so good at defining what we're against, that what we're against is beginning to define us. When I go to rallies and I hear the tone of people's voices, it feels like war. How can we stop clear cuts if we're ever so effective at clear cutting each other? It's okay to point out what is wrong, but it's more important to stand for what is right. Befriend, don't create enemies, because then you have war. You don't have to play in the game called war. You can continue to call out their humanity. And so calling out their humanity meant that giving people the benefit of the doubt, trying to be friendly, even if you don't always agree with them. And I think it kind of worked. Like I have every council member's text message on my cell phone. You know, I could text Rob, get a response, any of the council members. So I don't know, I think I might be onto something there, you know? Don't need to go to war all the time. So again, there wasn't one silver bullet that saved the land. For example, I went to a John Muir Land Trust dinner just to try to get my word out like I always do, and I sat next to Colin Kofi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, Colin Kofi. He's on the board of directors of East Bay Regional Parks. He learned about the project. Sure enough, he signed our ballot argument. And that made a big difference to have his name on our ballot argument. And that was just one connection that happened because I happened to go to a John Muir Land Trust dinner and drag my wife there. So it really helped to just focus on raising awareness. Like that, there was a lot of spaghetti, like I'm saying, thrown on the wall, but I finally realized, okay, let's just raise public awareness. Something good will come to this if enough people know about it. And so, like I said, in 2014, we found the map that it was John Muir's, and his great-great-grandson, Robert Hanna, got wind of that and helped me out big time. I had to change our work petition that had like 300 signatures, all my friends, and Robert took it to like 3,000 because he had a little bit of a following. He helped save all those state parks from closing. So that was a huge milestone because it flipped the city council. All of a sudden, the mayor wrote an op-ed in the Mercury News saying, we got to save this land, it was John Muir's, and all of a sudden the whole city council was, instead of kind of being ambivalent, or what's the right word, you know, they were a little pro-development for the first early years. Like they thought it'd be good for the city. I get it, we need homes. But having that John Muir connection flipped the council. The op-ed got written in 2014, and that's when the city started engaging with the developer more seriously and hiring consultants. And there was a long period of waiting from like 2014 to 2019. It felt like nothing was happening, and I was starting to lose hope. And what I call angels showed up. Jill Penman, Jamie Manesco, Karen Phillips, Lynn Stevens, Tim Platt, Dick Snyder, Seth Adams. These folks came out and they feel like angels when you're all by yourself. Like you don't know who these people are, where they even came from, what day you met them. And they made all the difference in the world going to city council meetings and doing presentations. So I'm just so grateful for those folks. I'm almost done here, Seth.
You're doing great.
Cool. All right. So in 2021, in the fall, that's when the city put out the survey, and we had a meeting with Robert Hanna and a small core team, and Robert really helped set the tone. He's like, this is a campaign. And I'd never been on a campaign. Okay, what are we going to do? Well, photos. So that's like my default thing. So I printed with my own money a bunch of 4x6 photos, enough for the whole city, 11,000, Costco. And Gretchen, I don't know if she's online, but bless her heart, Gretchen helped walk like the whole town. I mean, she walks. That, bless her heart. So I thought if we could get a photo on everyone's doorstep, they'd feel a little bit of connection. You know, it's not a piece of paper. It was a real, you could frame it if you want. You know, it was a nice photo. And maybe that helped. We only got 58% of the survey. We're within the margin of error. If you round it up, you know, there's a chance. And so they put it on the ballot. And then it was round 2 with the campaign. And we developed some nice artwork. My friend down in San Luis Obispo, who's a graphic designer, Pete Ayer, put together these beautiful flyers. We had these all around town. And after election night, I had the unpleasure of taking down every sign around town after 12 years of effort, thinking that we lost by 100 votes. And being really disappointed with myself, because I tend to be a procrastinator, like I wrote this speech last night, thinking, God, if I just done a little more, you know? And thank God for mail-in ballots. It just, a week later, it flipped, and the rest is history. And I just want to thank the citizens. Like, everyone stepped up. Every single person played a role in this. It's the web of humanity. It's all connected. And can't wait for everybody to go up there, and it's going to be beautiful in the spring. I think it'll be open officially in the spring. So thank you all for showing up and being here.
We hope to meet with the city manager within the next 2 to 3 weeks to talk about a variety of issues, including a dedication of the Alhambra Hills open space property and some kind of discussion about allowing people some interim use of some sort. But we want to have a dedication in the spring, and we'll keep you posted about that. And the mayor's right there, so let her know. Before we do the presentation, does anybody have any questions for Jamie?
I went to the city council meeting a couple of months ago. There was discussion of financing. What is the status currently of the financing, the loan?
It was officially purchased in November, so the city owns it. The bonds were sold on the free market, and they officially own it. So they closed escrow.
So the loan went through?
Yep, the bonds went through, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And thank you, Pete, for all your walking too. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Could I have Marcella, Hazel, and Owen?
Owen, yeah.
Owen, come up here as well, and Pete is going to take a few photos.
Here, why don't you go back?
So I had never walked on the Alhambra Hills property before Jamie took me up there in November. I looked at it for years from the roads. I've hiked up the backside a little bit, but I've never been up on the ridge. And I have a friend who's an artist, a plein air painter, and her name is Shirley Newtbar. And she had convinced me and others to get involved in saving one of her most favorite pieces of property, the Gateway property at the entrance to Mount Diablo State Park a number of years ago, because she and her painter friends thought it was one of the most beautiful views of Mount Diablo. And they got a citizens group going to help make that effort happen. And so she knew this story intimately, having done it herself. And she said it was an honor to be asked. She went up on that same hike with me and Jamie. She said it was an honor to be asked to paint the Alhambra Hills property.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
And Thousand Friends of Martinez 2022 Citizen of the Year, Jamie Foxx. Despite all odds, Jamie's indefatigable defense of Alhambra Hills led to a popular vote directing the city of Martinez to purchase the land. It can now be enjoyed by all. Anything you want to add, Marcella, before we move on?